Chapter 20. My throat's getting feels a little rash, a little harsh. So, chapter 20. What, finally, is a practical application of all this? Can anything be done to halt or even to hinder the process I have described? I say to you that something can be done by each one of us here tonight. Each of us can resolve to do something every day to resist the application of manufacturer standards, to protest against ugly articles of furniture and tableware, to speak out against sham architecture, to resist the importation into more and more public places of loudspeakers relaying the light program, to say one word against the yellow press, against the bestseller, against the Theodore Oregon, to say one word for the instinctive culture of the integrated village type community. And that way we shall be saying a word, however small, in its individual effect for our native tradition, for our common heritage, in short, for what we once had and may someday have again, merry England. With a long jabbering belch, Dixon got up from the chair where he had been writing this and did his ape imitation all around the room, with one arm bent at the elbow so that the fingers brushed the armpit, the other crooked in the air so that the inside of the forearm lay across the top of his head. He wove with bent knees and hunched, rocking shoulders across to the bed, upon which he jumped up and down a few times, gibbering to himself. A knock at the door was followed so quickly by the entry of Bertrand that he only had time to stop gibbering and strain his body. Bertrand was wearing his blue beret. He looked at him. "What are you doing up there?" "I like it up here, thanks. Any objection?" "Come down and stop clowning. I got a few things to say to you, and you better listen." He seemed in a controlled rage and was breathing heavily. Though this might well have been the result of running up 2 flights of stairs, Dixon jumped lightly down on the floor. He, too, was panting a little. "What do you want to say?" "Just this. Last time I saw you, I told you to stay away from Christine. I now discover you haven't done so. What have you got to say about that to start with?" "What do you mean? I haven't stayed away from her." "Don't try that on me, Dixon. I know all about your, sh- your surreptitious little cup of tea with her on the sly yesterday. I'm on to you, all right." "Oh, she told you about that, did she?" Bertrand tying his lips behind the beard, which looked as if he could do it with the comb out. "No, no, of course she didn't," he said violently. "If you knew her at all, you know she didn't do things like that. She's not like you. If you really want to know, and I hope it'll give you a kick, it was one of your so-called pals in this house who told my mother about it. You ought to enjoy thinking about that. Everybody hates you, Dixon, and my God, I can see why anyway. The point is I want an explanation of your conduct." "Oh dear," Dixon said with a smile. "I'm afraid that's rather a tall order." "Explain my conduct now, that is asking something. I can't think of anybody who'd be quite equal to that task." He was watching Bertrand closely, filling away the news of his latest blow from Johns. Who else could it be? For later pondering an appropriate action. "Cut it out," Bertrand said, flushing. "I give you a straight warning to leave Christine alone. When I say that sort of thing, I expect people to have the sense to do as I say. Why haven't you, eh?" Bertrand's rage and the mere fact of his visit here combined nicely with their superfluousness in view of Dixon's having already given up his interest in Christine for other reasons and so abandoning the Bertrand campaign. But he'd be a fool not to keep that to himself for a bit and enjoy himself with a spot of sniping. "I didn't want to," he said. There was a pause during which Bertrand twice seemed on the point of uttering a long and inarticulate bay. His unusual eyes looked like polished glass. Then in a quieter voice than before, he said, "Look here, Dixon, you don't seem quite to appreciate what you've got yourself into. Allow me to explain." He sat down on the arm of the Pall Mall chair and removed his beret, which went rather oddly with the dark suit, white collar, and vine-patterned tie he wore. Dixon sat down on the bed, which whimpered softly beneath him. "This business between Christine and myself," Bertrand said, fiddling with his beard, "is a serious business, unquestionably. We've known each other for some considerable period of time, and we're not in it just for a spot of old slap and tickle. Do you follow? I don't want to get married yet a while, but it's distinctly on the cards that I might marry Christine in a couple of years or so. What I mean is it's a long-term affair, quite definitely. Now, Christine's very young, younger even than her age. She's not used to having individuals abducting her from dances and inviting her to off-the-record tea parties and hot hotels and all the rest of it. In the circumstances, it's only natural she should feel flattered by it, enjoy the excitement of it, and so on for a time. But only for a time, Dixon. Very soon she's going to start feeling guilty about it and wishing she'd never agreed to meet you at all. And that's where the trouble's going to start. Being the sort of girl she is, she's going to feel bad about getting rid of you and about doing things behind my back. She doesn't know I know about this yet and about the whole shooting match. Well, I want you to prevent all that for the very adequate reason that it's not going to help me at all. I've had quite a time straightening her out already. I don't want to have a start all over again. So what I want to say to you is keep off the grass, that's all. You're causing nothing but trouble by behaving as you are. You won't do yourself any good, and you only hurt Christine and inconvenience me. She's got a few days more down here, and it would be silly to spoil them for all concerned. Does that make sense now? Dixon had lit a cigarette to hide the effect on him. This accounted Christine's motives. It was more penetrating than he had expected from Bertrand. Yes, it makes sense all right up to a point, he said in what he hoped was a casual tone, except for the part about straining Christine out, of course, which is mere wishful drooling. Never mind that, though. It all obviously makes very good sense to you. None of it does to me, though. You don't seem to realize that it's all only all right if your first assumptions are right. I'm telling you that they're right, my lad, Bertrand said loudly. That's what I'm telling you. Yes, I noticed that, but don't expect me to take your assumptions. It's my turn to tell you something now. The serious long-term part of this business isn't anything to do with you and Christine. Oh no, it's to do with me and Christine. What's happening isn't me unnecessarily distracting her from you. It's you unnecessarily distracting her from me. Just for the moment. It won't go on much longer. How's that for sense now? Bertrand rose to his feet again and faced Dixon with his legs slightly apart. He spoke in a level tone, but his teeth were clenched. Just get this straight in your so-called mind. When I see something I want, I go for it. I don't allow people of your sort to stand in my way. That's what you're leaving out of account. I'm having Christine because it's my right. Do you understand that? If I'm after something, I don't care what I do to make sure that I get it. It's the only law I abide by. It's the only way to get things in this world. The trouble with you, Dixon, is that you're simply not up to my weight. If you want to fight, pick someone your own size. Then you might stand a chance with me. And just you just haven't a hope in hell. With me, you just haven't a hope in hell. Dixon moved a pace nearer. You're getting a bit too old for that to work anymore, Welch, she said quickly. People aren't going to skip out of your path indefinitely. You think that just because you're tall and can put paint on canvas, you're a sort of demigod. It wouldn't be so bad if you really were, but you're not. You're a twister and a snob and a bully and a fool. You think you're sensitive, but you're not. Your sensitivity only works for things that people do to you. Touchy and vain, yes, but not sensitive. He paused, but Bertrand was only staring at him, making no attempt to interrupt. Dixon went on. You got the idea that you're a great lover, but that's wrong too. You're so afraid of me, who's nothing more than a louse, according to you, that you have to march in here and tell me to keep off the grass like a heavy husband. And you're so dishonest that you can tell me how important Christine is to you without it entering your head that you're carrying on with some other chap's wife all the time. It's not just that I object to. It's the way you never seem to reflect how insincere. What the bloody hell are you talking about? Bertrand's breath was whistling through his nose. He clenched his fist. You're a spot of the old slap and tickle with Carol Goldsmith. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know what you're talking. Oh, my dear fellow, don't start denying it. Why bother anyway? Surely it's just one of those things, yeah, because you're right, isn't it? If you ever tell this tale to Christine, I'll break your neck into so many. It's all right. I'm not the sort to do that, Dixon said with a grin. I'm not like you. I can take Christine away from you without that, you Byronic tail chaser. All right, you got it coming. Bertrand bayed furiously. I warned you. You came and stood over Dixon. Come on, stand up, you dirty little barfly, you nasty little jumped-up turd. What are we going to do, dance? I'll give you a dance. I'll make you dance. Don't worry. Just stand up if you're not afraid to. If you think I'm going to sit back and take this from you, you're mistaken. I don't happen to be that type, you Sam. I'm not Sam, you fool, Dixon shrieked. This was the first taunt of all. He shook off his glasses and put them in his top jacket pocket. They faced each other on the floor rug, feet apart, elbows crooked in uncertain attitudes, as if about to begin some ritual which neither had learnt the cues. I'll show you, Bertrand chimed and jabbed at Dixon's face. Dixon stepped aside, but his feet slipped, and before he could recover, Bertrand's fist had landed with some force high up on his right cheekbone. A little shaken but undismayed, Dixon stood still, and while Bertrand was still off his balance after delivering his blow, hit him very hard indeed on the larger and more convoluted of his ears. Bertrand fell down, making a lot of noise in doing so and dislodging a china figurine from the mantelpiece. It exploded on the tiles of the hearth, emphasizing the silence which fell. Dixon stepped forward, rubbing his knuckles. The impact had hurt them rather. After some seconds, Bertrand began moving about on the floor, but made no attempt to get up. It was clear that Dixon had won this round, and it then seemed the whole Bertrand match. He put his glasses on again, feeling good. Bertrand caught his eye with a look of embarrassed recognition. The bloody old trouser-faced, boot-faced totem pole on a crap reservation, Dixon thought. You bloody old trouser-faced, boot-faced totem pole on a crap reservation, he said, as if discreetly applauding his terminology. A quiet knocking came at the door. Come in, Dixon said with reflex promptness. Mitchie entered. Good afternoon, Mr. Dixon, he said, then added politely, good afternoon to the still prostrate Bertrand, who at this stimulus struggled to his feet. I seem to come at an inconvenient time. Not at all, Dixon said smoothly. Mr. Welch is just going. Bertrand shook his head, not in contradiction, but apparently to clear it, which interested Dixon. He moved host-like to the door with the departing Bertrand, who went out in silence. Goodbye, Dixon said, then turned to Mitchie. And what can I do for you, Mr. Mitchie? Mitchie's expression, though as usual unreadable, was a new one to Dixon. I come about the special subject, he said. Oh, yes, do sit down. I won't, thanks. I must be on my way in a moment. I just dropped in to tell you that I haven't been into the matter quite thoroughly with Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, Miss McCorkudale, and Miss App Reese Williams, and we finally made up our minds. Good. What conclusion did you come to? Well, I'm sorry to say that all three of the ladies have decided that the thing's rather too formidable for them. Miss Cordell decided to do Mr. Goldsmith documents, and Miss O'Shaughnessy, Miss Op Reese Williams are going to do the professor's subject. This announcement painted Dixie. He wanted the three pretty girls to have conquered their objections and opted for the subject because he was so nice and so attractive. He said, "Oh wow, that's rather a pity. What about you, Mr. Mitchie? I've decided that your subject attracts me a good deal, and so I'd like to put down officially for it if I may." "I see, so I shall just have you." "Yes, just me." There was silence. Dixon scratched his chin. "Well, I'm sure we'll have some fun with it." "I'm sure, too. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I banged in like that." "Not at all. It was a great help. See you next term then, Mr. Michi." "I'm coming to your lecture tonight, of course." "What on earth are you going to do that for?" "The subject interests me naturally. I think it must interest quite a lot of other people too." "Oh, how do you mean?" "Everybody I've mentioned to says they're coming. You should have a very good house, I think." "That's comfort, I must say. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I'm pretty sure I shall. Thanks again. Good luck for tonight." "I'll need it. Chiro." When Michi had gone, Dixon reflected with some complacency that he hadn't called him Sirs once, but how horrible next term was going to be. On the other hand, he was beginning to feel more and more positively that there wasn't going to be a next term as far as he was concerned, not a university term anyway. He fingered his chin again. He'd better shave before he did anything else. After that, he'd run up and see if Mr. Atkinson was in. His company and perhaps some of his whiskey were just what Dixon felt he could do with before starting the evening. Alright, y'all. That was chapter 20. Not too long, only about like 11 minutes.